let's listen to them respectfully, you know, and if somebody says something really, really colossally thick, then we will allow ourselves a brief laugh before we return to the good manners and etiquette for which conservatives are so rightly around the world known. Now, what's the instructions? We have to come up here? No? No? I want to pick people. Okay, raise your hands. Raise your hands. Well, you don't necessarily get what you want just by yelling for it. You're enthusiastic. The lady up here. I will come all the way around, I promise. Lady up here. Yeah.
Oh gosh! Wow. Hey.
Hi.
Hi, Milo. Okay, so I wanted to hear about your opinion on freedom of speech. Obviously, this has been an issue for our campus.
Yes.
Quite recently, Donald Trump tweeted out something about giving people potential jail time if they burn the flag. I want to know, where do you think the line should be drawn in terms of free speech? Who draws that line? And, I mean, if it should be drawn at all, really. Sure.
I have to say, you know, we don't always agree 100% wholeheartedly with our parents, and I think Daddy got that one wrong. I think it is unspeakable to burn a symbol of hope and freedom and capitalism, which is the best thing in the world. I think it is distasteful and disrespectful and odious and horrible, but I don't think you should go to prison for it. I think you should be held up to the court of public opinion and ridiculed for it. I think people should be allowed to express their opinions about it, as I just did, and we'll move on with our lives. And hopefully, as we educate people better about what that flag means and what people sacrifice to keep it flying, fewer and fewer people all the time will be moved to do things like that. Now, Trump doesn't have a perfect record on free speech, so sometimes people do ask me these kinds of questions, and they're perfectly reasonable questions to ask. For instance, he sometimes talks about clamping down on the press a little bit more. Well, so my interpretation of what he said about libel was, he was talking about malicious libel. He was talking about journalists who knowingly print untrue things, like Glamour magazine, who called me a white supremacist, and the minute that my publicist got in touch with them, they changed it like that, without even asking, which suggests to me that they probably knew it wasn't true when they printed it. Now, that's malicious libel, and that comes with pretty heavy jail sentences. It's a really bad thing to do. Now, you can still be held accountable for, you know, the First Amendment, you know, doesn't cover everything. And that's a pretty bad thing, and it's my interpretation that he meant if people knowingly print untrue things. Well, it's very clear that the press has sort of systematically failed in this country, the system-wide failure, which is precisely the sort of situation where the government does sometimes step in industries that have, you know, widespread systemic failure. I don't mind his suggestion of strengthening punishments for malicious libel. I think it would have a good effect on the press, but I can't honestly agree with putting people in prison for burning the flag. I suppose I try to think of myself as a free speech fundamentalist. I suppose the only real objection, and I haven't really reconciled this myself, is when it comes to Islam, because I think there are situations in which, you know, simply wildly untrammeled free speech cannot be allowed. You cannot, for instance, directly incite people to commit violent acts. You know, you can't stand up on with a microphone like this, and I can't tell all of you people to go and attack a particular member of the audience. That would be illegal, and it should be. It should be illegal. I struggle with how freely people should be able to preach that particular faith in this country, given that Omar Mateen, for instance, who killed 49 of my lot and injured 50 more of them, was radicalized in a mosque just north of Orlando, a place called Stanford, I think, which hosts preachers who say things like the compassionate thing to do is to murder all homosexuals. I wonder whether that ought to be protected by the First Amendment. I don't know. But on the question of the flag, I think he was wrong. As ugly as it is, and as much as I wish people wouldn't do it, I don't think you should put people in prison for it. Next question. Let's go with you at the back there. The gentleman up there? Yeah. Wait until you get the microphone, because then everyone can hear you, sweetheart.
Hey, Milo. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for protecting the First Amendment.
Well, thank you. It really matters, you know, and a lot of people who live in this country don't realize that it does, and they don't know why it does, because they don't realize that freedom doesn't just get inherited. You have to fight for it with every single generation. You know, you have to re-earn it every single generation. A lot of Americans don't seem to get that.
I do want to ask, though, In Trump's Muslim ban,
Yes.
he's banning people from Iraq and Libya, 2 countries to be destabilized, but he's letting Saudi Arabians come in, and
Yes.
that's the home of Wahhabism. So
Yes.
that's my question. Thank you.
That's wrong. You should just blanket Muslim ban, in my view. Saudi Arabia is the last country we should be giving special privileges to after, the amount that they fund terrorism. Saudi Arabia is, politics isn't all about, perfect worlds, and you have to make, in some cases, as anyone who's seen 24 will know, horrible compromises sometimes, but I think that's a bridge too far, and I would love to see a president who actually took a stand against Saudi Arabia. Maybe later in his presidency he will. He should. Yes, all right, this gentleman here. Okay. All right, no need to be so passive-aggressive about it. You're the one yelling.
First of all, these people drove from Houston for this show.
Oh, my goodness. Well, thank you very much for
people
coming.
right
Thank
here.
you. Thank you.
Okay. I write a lot of comments on Breitbart. I'm pretty high up there in the comment like area.
Well, thank you.
I wrote one whenever they had the UC Davis riot that shut you down.
Yes.
And I was second from the top. It said, wasn't Ahmadinejad invited to speak at Columbia? And he wanted to wipe a whole country off the map. Why are you a danger? Whenever they had this guy that he was killing Americans in Iraq. Okay, my other comment on this immigration. Immigrants from all over the world leave their country because of the corruption and the lack of rule of law in their country to come here to a country envied for its rule of law. Then they demand that we break our laws for them, therefore becoming the lawless country they just left. We need to enforce our laws. And if you go down there, you're going to be hung from a bridge. So that's what's going on across the border. Thank you. Well,
thank you. You're right on that last point, and I touched on it briefly in my speech. And you see this. I mean, people say this is ridiculous, but then you start to read, what few stories emerge about this stuff, about sort of parallel justice emerging. Sharia courts being tacitly endorsed by the British justice system. Sharia, of course, being the system in which, under many circumstances, a woman's testimony is valued at half of that of a man. Sharia law, of course, supported by the woman who organized the Women's March in D.C. a few days ago. The idiocy of American progressives, how utterly fucking preposterously dumb they are. They believe that a symbol of female emancipation is women walking in hijabs who support Sharia law. This stuff, and this is my problem with, this is my great First Amendment dilemma, which I'm as yet unresolved, is that when you see people who come in here and actively agitate for parallel justice systems and who sort of collaborate with liberal idiots to create new classes of crime, like hate crime. I've said this before, and it's sort of funny-ish, but it makes it a proper point. Hate crimes, mean effectively that it's more of a crime to punch me than it is to punch some straight person in the audience, right? If you can convince somebody that, it's because I was gay, which is sort of in the eye of the whatever. Well, it's obviously ridiculous. I'm way more punchable than most of you. I probably had it coming if I got hit, But what definitely shouldn't happen... Yeah, okay, we agree on something. But what probably shouldn't happen is, that the same crime perpetrated by the same person can carry different sentences depending on who they do it to. That's a sort of weird parallel justice that does away with the principle of equality before the law. And this is the sort of thing we see with Sharia courts popping up. And this is also, I have to say, the sort of thing that we see on campuses with Title IX legislation. And so, it's a wider problem than just an immigrant problem. It is a problem with the way that progressives see the world, casting out reason and fairness and equality and logic in favor of identity politics. It's not something we can get into in great detail today, but it is noxious and poisonous, and it is what happens when you throw out idea and principle and you replace it with ego and personal identity. But yeah, I mean, you were quite right in both the things you said. Let's go to... No, you've got a MAGA hat on, so you're going to be nice to me. I want to find someone who's not going to be nice to me. Who's not going to be nice to me? You? Okay, you're not going to be nice to me. No, she's not going to be nice to me. No, go on. Well, I'm very happy to ask you a question, but are you going to be well-behaved? Are you going to be well-mannered? What, like this whole talk?
Oh, snap.
So is your definition of me going low and you going high, you continually interrupting a lecture and refusing to wait until the Q&A? Actually, I was speaking. No, I don't think so. You know, and before you start bleating about freedom of speech, I enforce one rule and one rule only in my Q&As, and that is good manners. Somebody else. Yeah, the guy here.
Milo?
Huh? Oh, yeah, no, sorry, okay, yeah, go ahead. You said you were going to be unpleasant too, so go ahead.
No, I promise I'll be nice to you.
Oh, no, I don't want you. Oh, well, come on, you've
Sorry.
got such... I can't say no to that hair. Go ahead.
Thank you. So my brother and I actually flew in from Las Vegas, Nevada to see you, and it's really great to be here. So
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, great to be here. So, just 2 questions. Will we ever see you meet Daddy? Or
Well, how do you know that hasn't happened? I will tell you one thing before you go to your second question. I'm not particularly keen to nail my sort of fortunes to any political administration. And I will tell you something very sincerely. The only reason I like Trump is because he isn't like other Republicans. I don't particularly like many other Republicans that have come before him. And if I were doing what I do now in the 90s, I probably would be going for the jugular of the religious right, because I felt that they represented the same threat to free expression and free speech, and so told some similar lies to the ones that the progressive left does today. They were saying then that video games and music could turn you into a violent person. Now the progressive left is saying video games can make you sexist and a rapist. I mean, both of these propositions are ludicrous and unsupported by any evidence whatsoever. What I like about Trump is he's sort of blowing up all of that. And so I don't feel an urge to, I don't sort of crave proximity to power. And I don't feel an urge, I prefer money, and I don't feel an urge to sort of pin my fortunes to a particular political administration. But obviously, many people in his circle are good friends.
okay, so that kind of being said, it kind of answers the second question. But would we ever see you run for a position in?
God, no! Are you kidding me? You think I'd survive as a politician? No. There's so many skeletons in my closet. That's why I had to get out of it.
Thank you, Milo.
That's why I had to leave. One more. Oh, 2 more. Okay, fine. No. It's not for me. I don't like politicians at all, and I don't like politics. Let's do. I'm not really interested in politics. You have a lot of people pointing at you, so let's do it. Yeah. Don't be proud of that hat. Just stand up and ask your question. I knew we'd get a fedora. What do you call it? Fedora here? You call it fedora. Yeah. Come on.
Thank you for your kind words.
You're welcome.
Also, thank you for coming to the university and sharing your thoughts.
Where are you from?
I'm from
Midlands or
Worcester,
something?
just south of Birmingham.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, I mean, I do disagree with some of the ways that you characterize the UK,
That's
and
okay.
Germany for that matter,
That's okay.
where I was living before here, but that's not what I want to focus my question on. I teach here at the university. I'm a PhD student in philosophy, and I do critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And with my class this week, we addressed the issue of kind of this post-truth politics and what that might entail and whether it's there. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, the question of free speech. Now, I entirely agree with you that free speech is important in our society, and I think everybody in this room agrees with that by virtue of being here. Mm-hmm. I actually sit on the left of the political spectrum,
Sure.
and I'm here because I believe that part of free speech is also the ability to listen,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's very important.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you. The angry young lady up here could learn a thing or two. Perhaps you should enroll for your classes.
Now, given that, my first question, which I'll probably want to follow up on,
All right.
is do you think there has been let's say, an issue with free speech and truth over the last year? I mean, Oxford said, it's the word of the year, it's kind of the most recent
post-truth
popular word, and whether truth is important in politics anymore.
This might be my fault, because I was talking to Bloomberg Businessweek, who did this big profile on me ages ago. And it's okay, he's all right. Bloomberg Business Week, this big pro for me ages ago, and I dropped into discussion in the course of like 2 days this phrase, post-truth era. And what I meant by it, what I was trying to say, was the facts are no longer enough. You have to also be persuasive and charming and funny and all the rest of it. That's what I meant by post-truth, post-fact era, whichever it was that they picked up. And it sort of went gangbusters after that. Certainly there seem to be two emerging sets of truths in America, and they're split fairly evenly down political lines, aren't they? And it's quite disturbing in some ways to sort of see the different versions of the universe described by, let's say, the New York Times and Breitbart, for instance. I do think that there's been a problem with truth, but I'm unconvinced that it is the conservative or libertarian side of the argument that has the problem. I think that the conspiratorial mythologizing about campus rape culture and the wage gap, the imperviousness to reason and fact that the progressive left has demonstrated over the last 30 years, is far more of a risk to democracy and to the pursuit of truth than anything that Trump has done in the last year. I think that, race baiting, mixing up statistics, selectively quoting statistics, lying about individual cases, and misreporting for ideological reasons around Black Lives Matter, the police, and race, has done far more damage to America than Donald Trump sort of vacillating on various things. So I think there's been a sort of bifurcation in Americans and the sort of news sources, the people they trust and where they get their news from, which is ultimately not going to be particularly helpful for the pursuit of truth or for democracy. But I think it's still, it's fake news is still primarily perpetrated by the left.
Given that, may I ask a couple of questions to you?
Why don't you do one, because then somebody else can
Okay,
have a chance.
yeah,
So pick your
absolutely,
best
I
one.
won't.
Pick your
Okay.
best one, and then I'll move on to someone else.
Whilst I don't want to disagree that the left also reports on fake news and focuses on certain statistics and not others, which is why I attempt to read everything in a world that's increasingly impossible to do that.
But it puts you in the minority on your side of the political divide, so you must get some fair credit for that.
Focusing, I guess, on your paper that you work for. Now, if the CIA came to us and said, and I do want to pose this to everybody in the room, and I'm more than open for a different interpretation, but if the CIA came to us and they said 97% of us agree that ISIS has developed a weapon that could wipe out, vast portions of America and destabilize our ecosystem for the next generations to come, would we want to do something about that? And you know what I'm getting at with this question?
Is this climate change?
Precisely.
Right.
So we have 97% of the
be
scientific
nice.
community.
Be nice.
So,
be nice.
yeah.
I'm perfectly happy
And I would love to hear your response on this. I believe in a political spectrum, we can have this. But when 97% of scientists say this, and then the Trump administration removes any question of climate change from the website, and says that that's not an issue they want to address for the future. I can say there are different political issues that
I understand
ways of solving it.
I understand the question.
That they can do that, but if they erase that discussion, I get really worried for even having a family in the future. And I'd love to hear your response. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I don't have a problem with the Trump administration focusing away from environmental issues about which the United States can do nothing compared to China, and towards things like trade and immigration, focusing on things that matter rather than identity politics. I was very happy to see the gay bit of the White House website disappear. We're doing fine. We're doing fine. Like, focus on stuff that actually matters. Like, help the rest of the country fix the fucking economy, and make sure that people can be, do, and say whatever they want. So I wasn't worried about seeing climate change disappear, because there's not a huge amount that America can really do about it with China and India anyway. As to your question, you're sort of invoking a lot of authorities there. So if the CIA said that 97%, well, you hit upon something interesting. I saw a video of somebody I wouldn't expect to agree with under normal circumstances, of Glenn Greenwald on the BBC, sort of completely confounding this reporter by saying, yes, intelligence agencies have bias. Intelligence agencies sometimes go on political crusades. Intelligence agencies sometimes lie. Shocking, I know. And I think we have this habit, and it's increasingly, I think, a good thing that we're breaking out of this habit of just believing what people tell us if they hold particular positions, and we don't dig any deeper. Well, I worked for a climate change NGO in Germany for over a year, and I was there when the IPCC reports were being drafted. I was there in Bali for Al Gore's speech. Saw him land in his private jet with his retinue of 7 I think they were Tahoes. Were they Tahoes? Maybe they were Suburbans. 7 of them, you know, green-fingered Al Gore. I was there for all of that. And I saw the level of politics over science that actually goes on. And I was in the room with scientists who gerrymandered numbers to fit political agendas. And I have to tell you, if 97% of any group tells me that something is the case, that makes me deeply suspicious. Because 97% is way too many. No issue is agreed upon by 97% of people. Nothing. Not elections, nothing. When 97... All right, well, let's say contentious hypotheses or, you know, matters for discussion, sure, okay. But when something like climate change, which is by no, you know, in no sense settled, 97% of scientists is actually a cause for suspicion and alarm for me. And indeed, we know from University of East Anglia and all kinds of other things, just how many obfuscations and manipulations have been made in climate data. The problem is that your side, if I can put it like that, made a PR error in selling climate change to people. You were hysterical about it. It was like a religion. And, well, it's like the problem is that when you're so hysterical and when you punish people for disagreeing, and this is where the free speech element comes in, when you ridicule and punish people for stepping outside of the progressive orthodoxy, when you turn people into laughingstocks or cost them their jobs because they don't agree with you about something, you start to lose sympathy. That's what the progressive left... And that actually is a characteristic, a classic characteristic of all the groups I hate. Black Lives Matter do it. Feminists do it. In fact, feminists have lost. You know, fewer than 1 in 5 American women now call themselves a feminist. Why? Because they're such cunts. Not because most women don't want to get into the statistics about campus rape. They don't care. But they just know that they don't want to be like those feminists because they quite like a boyfriend one day and ugh. So, you know, the problem is you goofed up trying to sell this to the public because you bullied them instead of persuading them. And the situation now is that people simply don't believe the established authorities that are supposed to be there to tell us things. And that situation has replicated itself across society. And that, I think, is a more interesting way of looking at sort of post-truth, post-fact societies. That breakdown of trust and belief in authority structures. That is the fault of no one but those authority structures themselves. Politicians have fucked themselves. The media has fucked itself. Higher education has fucked itself. And scientists have fucked themselves. The only people who believe scientists uncritically now are left-wing journalists. That's a real problem. And I can tell you... And I can tell you, you were quick to invoke your own life experience, you know, living in Germany, coming from England, and disagreeing with my characterizations. Well, I can tell you from working in a climate change NGO, I don't trust those cunts as far as I can throw them. I think we can do one more. Let's do... Yeah, all right, Sorry? Hello, darling. No, who's going to be mean to me? Who's going to be mean? Do you promise to be mean? You're going to be mean? Okay, the guy in the blue shirt. There we go. What? Okay. Oh, he's over there. Now, he's promised to be vicious. I expect to be satisfied by the end of this.
Don't threaten me with a good time. Kidding. So you actually hit on the political establishment around the globe. I'm sorry I'm not going to be mean, but I do have a good question which ties into that answer.
Could you speak up for us?
My question ties into the answer which you just gave about the political correctness around the globe. With the vote against establishment Brits with Brexit, the increase in the number of elected right-wing politicians in Germany against Angela Merkel's immigration policies, and now the election of Donald Trump, where do you see the global perception of political correctness heading, and how do you see it as a global unspoken revolt against governments and how they've gone too far with telling people how to live?
It wasn't a mean question at all.
I'm sorry.
I feel very let down. It's like ordering a blonde hooker and something ginger showing up. We've all been there. Well, I'm very... Did you say there's a ginger over there? Oh, God. you should back away slowly and check his pockets. If you see his phone ringing mysteriously, or he comes home one day with friends called Abdullah and Hussein, you need to start keeping a close eye on him. He's in a risk category. I'm very happy to see voters in the UK and in the US soundly and enthusiastically reject establishment, globalist elites and authorities. Very happy about that. They're right to do so. They're right on most of the issues too, by the way. I mean, the progressive left is this sort of great cultural hegemony from the left, and they've sort of forgotten how to argue, and they've wandered themselves into really ludicrous positions with these strange definitions of racism, these strange definitions of sexism, the lies they tell about people, the lies they tell to people all the time. It's very worrying, and they deserve a good kick in the teeth. I worry a little bit about some of the populist movements in Europe. So I think, Brexit, fine. There's no racist party in England. That was destroyed when Nick Griffin went on the BBC, so the BNP is gone. UKIP is a perfectly respectable, reasonable, good party, and Nigel Farage is awesome. And Brexit was a thoroughly good thing, and Trump's election is a good thing. But I do wonder, and it's not something I pay a huge amount of attention to, because it's sort of outside my area of interest. I do wonder how much the movements like AfD in Germany and Front National in France are based on high-minded ideals, like sort of a Republican dedication to the Constitution, and how much of it might be racially charged. So I don't know the answer to that question. I'm a little bit more hesitant encouraging and celebrating Marine Le Pen, for instance, than I am Donald Trump. Well, would that be nice? Would that be nice? So I don't know. I sort of think that the political revolution, I'd quite like to see it stop. I'd quite like to see it sort of finish up where it is. I know that many of my colleagues at Breitbart won't agree with that, and they have very, very persuasive and powerful arguments, and they will probably end up convincing me, and if you ask me in 6 months, I'll probably have a different view on this. One of the reasons we're opening an office in France is to better educate the rest of us. So I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling that the ones that are completely defensible have happened already. What I now want to see, and this is what you guys are here for, is now that you have been emboldened, and now you're able to say and do what you want under a Trump administration, now you are energized and sort of reignited in your passion for freedom of speech, capitalism, property rights, and all the kind of stuff that made this country awesome. Now that you've got all that stuff,
Milo hates freedom. Trump hates freedom. Deportations are unfreedom.
customary to learn how to pronounce people's names before you heckle them, but I'm glad you're having fun. Now it's time for you to go. What? You think I mean... It's sort of... these peculiar, nonsensical slogans they keep shouting because they don't have any arguments left. It's very depressing. I feel sorry for you. It's very important to have strong interlocutors. It's very important to have strong enemies. You know, we want to know that we're definitely right. And at the moment, there's just no intellectual opposition whatsoever, because all they do in the face of different facts and arguments is going, I feel for you guys. I do. Okay, I was thinking to myself the other day, actually, in a rare moment of narcissism, that I was probably the most interesting person in America. But what would be even more interesting if I had a really strong adversary. If I had that, you know, something like sort of Gore Vidal, William F. Buckley, kind of like lifelong rivalry. You know, somebody I could grow with intellectually and have big debates, and sometimes they win, and sometimes I win. Someone's actually good enough to go toe-to-toe with me on TV, like week in, week out for years, and I just can't fucking think of anyone. Somebody on the left, well, maybe Shapiro, yes. That's very mean of you. Very mean of you. Poor Ben. Poor little Ben. I've told him I'm happy to do it. I mean, he's now bedded himself into this lie that I backed out of it. Like, you know. What's that? Well, Glenn Beck is definitely on the left, but I don't like to intrude on private grief nor bully the disabled, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure it would be fair for me to appear in a TV studio with him. I mean, he was close enough to suicide after Ted Cruz U-turned. I think after losing to somebody he called a danger to the Republic and the reincarnation of Goebbels, if he were to lose to someone like that in a debate, he really would finish himself off. It would be down into the bowl of Cheetos and never up again. So, I don't know, maybe. I mean, I'd be perfectly look, I'm happy to talk to anybody. I mean, I'm not always going to be the smartest person in the room, normally, but not always. I'm not always going to be, you know, I'm not always going to win every debate. I'm not always going to answer every question as brilliantly as I did his. But, I'm very happy to debate anyone. What tends to happen to me, though, is that people agree to and then back out, claim that I was the one that backed out, and then never respond to emails. So you can read between the lines on that one. I think we're done. Thank you very much. It's been lovely. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please stay at your seats for just a moment for us. Please stay at your seats.
Thank you.